All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. All right, I'd like to call this meeting of June 2025 of the Delaware Astronomical Society to order. This meeting is about the Astrophoto Showcase, which will be featured in two different parts. First item, do we have any new members that want to introduce themselves? I don't think we do at the moment. All right. So I also want to note that we have a picnic. That's the most important announcement because that's in about 2 weeks. It's on the 28th of June, and that will be at 3 p.m. So you do not have to bring a main course. Basically, Jeff is going to be giving us some nice pulled pork as well as some chicken. And we're going to be providing that free of charge. So DIS members, come on out, bring your family, bring your loved ones. We'll have a good old time and, bring a dish to share as well, because it is potluck in addition to the main course, which is provided by Jeff. That will be hosted here at Mount Cuba. We've already reserved the place and it'll be a good old time. So make sure you come out for that. Next item, Astro League. You want to tell us something about that?
All right, just like to make a plug for the Astronomical League. It's an optional membership that you can join as being a DOS member. About half the people in this room actually are members of the Astro League, but about as a club, only about 20% of the memberships joins the Astro League every year. It costs $9. And it's got a July 1st renewal date, so we're coming up on that. So we're trying to collect the dues for that for the people that want to join. Again, it's optional, but you can join. Lynn King is our coordinator for the Astro League, so she, if you want to get certificates or awards, she'll help you get all of those sorts of things. So what is the Astronomical League? It's an umbrella organization of 240 clubs like ours, and DOS is a member of the Astronomical League. Its purpose is to foster astronomy education, give you incentives to observe and do research and assist with communications. And you do get this reflector magazine from it that comes out quarterly. One of the big things about the Astronomical League, it has a bunch of observing programs, about 65 observing programs, and they vary in complexity from very easy things to very complicated things. And they're both, some of them are observing, some of sketching, and some of which are taking pictures and things like that. So it's got a lot of interest and a lot of people can do them. The most common one is the outreach award. So if you get like 20 or so hours of assisting at outreach at Woodside or other places like that, you could earn this award from the Astronomical League, get a nice pin from that. And then as you do more outreach programs, you can get more opportunities. They got messier things. They got globular clusters. A lot of people like Mark has gotten a lot of awards from them. So they got pretty much anything you want to look at, you can get these awards for. So we're in the process of trying to collect the $9 dues. You can pay me now at the meeting. You should have gotten emails from me, and the Focus has information on how to join. So if you're interested in joining, be sure to try to give me $9 before the 1st of June when I send it in. Thanks.
Thank you. Very good. And then Bill, you want to say something about the AP SIG?
Sure. So this coming Saturday, June 21st, we have the June AP SIG meeting, 1 p.m. on Zoom. And the announcement will go out over the DAS at yahoogroups.com. Not Yahoo, excuse me, groups.io.
Good.
Blast from the past.
Yes, indeed.
And for this meeting, Ryan Gilbert will give us a special topic presentation on landscape astrophotography and how to do it.
Very nice. Cool. And then Mary, do you have anything for the book club? Are you there?
Yeah, she's on mute.
It's possible she's not there at the moment. All right. So are there any other announcements that I've missed? All right, then let's get started with the Astrophoto showcase. I'm going to share the desktop of the computer. I can click the right button.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Okay. Sounds better. Oh, yep.
Yeah, sorry, she's.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Sounds much better.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. The book club is meeting on June 26th, next Thursday. And we will be discussing The End of the Night by Paul Bogard. It's a classic among the night sky enthusiasts. We will be joined by Diane Turnchak, who is a special lecturer from Carnegie Mellon. She's also a well-known lecturer on the subject of the dark sky. And she just was recently lecturing at the Brandywine River Museum. The Pittsburgh Astronomical Society will also be joining us. And Diane has invited members of the dark sky community, outreach community to join us. And I've extended an invitation to John Bortle. And John has expressed an interest in joining us. I'm not certain whether or not he'll actually be able to make it and navigate the technology to join us. Probably it will just be via phone. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll at least be able to say hello to such an important man in the study of the night sky and the preservation of the night sky. So I hope you'll all be able to join us. Please extend invitations to your guests, anyone else you feel would be interested in the topic. I'd also like to remind everyone that I know the general meetings will be discontinued, but because the summer months are often a time when people can read, we do hold our book club meetings throughout the summer. So I will be emailing you directly with invitations for book club meetings throughout the summer months. Hope to see you next week, and thank you. Sorry for the audio rumpus.
No problem. Oh, good. Thank you very
Good
much,
night.
Mary. Wonderful. I'm going to share the screen again. And then we're going to bring up this one. There you go, Bo. Okay. Here's the.
Oh, I don't want you to.
So I'm gonna dim the lights a bit here.
I'll also pin it just to the one. Pin. To that. There you go.
Okay, great. All right, well, welcome to the June 2025 Astrophoto Showcase. The last time we did this was maybe 2.5 or 3 years back, I think. So let's see if we all the controls on. So I'm going to do part one, and mostly I'll be concentrating on established techniques, and that is using imaging rigs that are assembled by the imager, mostly from off-the-shelf hardware and software. Okay, and we'll start out with Astrophotos by Mark Mitchell. Mark, I know you're out there in Zoom land. If you're interested in taking over, just let me know, but I'll go ahead with it.
I probably have to click here so that we can see him.
He's probably not going to. He said I should, but I just wanted to give
If you wanted to, you could pin him.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, will do.
Then we'll just have you do it. Okay. Cool.
Okay. So Mark uses a number of different scopes for imaging. For quite a while, he's been using these 3 different refractors, 400 to 952 millimeter focal length range. That's very common range for deep sky imaging. The larger one here he's used for planetary, and he's recently added the Celestron Edge HD11, which he's still kind of working into his system. Here's his imaging rig out on the driveway. And you can see the guide scope and guide camera, imaging camera, filter wheel, a corrector. Almost all basic telescopes require some kind of corrector so that you can get sharp details out at the edge of the field of the image sensor. And he also has a motorized focuser here. The whole rig is mounted on an Astrophysics 1100 GTO mount, and that in turn is sitting on a scope buggy. So this is a rollout system. He keeps the whole thing assembled, rolls it out of his garage when he wants to image. He still has to do a polar alignment, but then he's off to the races and can start taking data and come back the next morning and roll it back in. There's a Windows computer that controls the whole system and handles data acquisition and guiding and that sort of thing. Okay, his first image here is the solar photosphere, region 1348, so it's a sunspot pair. Okay, and he's using, in this case, a Herschel wedge to knock down the brightness of the sun. And a planetary imaging camera has a very small sensor size, but a very fast readout so that he can do very short exposure times and take many thousands of frames in a short amount of time. Okay, still a Windows laptop. He didn't say whether he's using SharpCap or Fire Capture, but it's a good bet. It's one or the other. And then for this image, he used 350 out of 1,000 frames that he captured from the sun. Processing was stacked in AutoStacker, and then PixInsight for processing and Photoshop to finish it off. So, except for changes, I'm not going to mention all of these technical details on the rest of his images. We'll just hit on the things that are different. So here's his photo. He's got the umbra and nice detail in the penumbra, as well as some granulation on the image.
How long did 1,000 frames take to get?
Probably about a minute.
Step back camera.
Okay.
And it's the sun.
Right.
Okay. It might have been 2 minutes. Hard to say. I have to ask Mark. Next up is the moon in the area of Copernicus and Eratosthenes craters. Okay, site, driveway. Everything else here is pretty much the same, still using the 2X Barlow 1900 millimeter focal length planetary camera. So we'll just move on. So here's his image of the moon. You've got Copernicus there, the other crater there. There's some dark regions here, and over here that are supposed to be pyroclastic flows. And of course, many craterlets. So very, very nice, sharp image. I always recommend the moon to beginners because it's very bright. Short exposures work just fine, and it's less sensitive to shakiness in your telescope mount. And there's massive amounts of detail there.
That almost feels 3D.
Yeah.
Yep. So his next object is Mars. Well, it is 3D. Like Bob Menzer said once, yeah. Right. 3X Barlow instead of 2X, and then otherwise almost the same. A few more of the frames were used, and he took 10,000 frames in this case. So a fairly long string of video. Added WinJupos to the processing. I'm not sure whether he did derotation on the planet or not. I kind of doubt it because Mars doesn't really rotate very rapidly. So here's his Mars image. Mars is a tough subject because it only comes around every couple of years. When it comes around, it might not be very big. It might be low on the horizon. And sometimes when otherwise conditions are good, Mars has got a dust storm blocking the detail. So anytime somebody gets a picture of Mars and they capture some detail on it, they're doing a good thing. They're doing good. Here you can see, I think that's Meridiani sinus, and I forget what they call that. Syrtis Major is disappearing over here on the right, rotating out of the view. You're only seeing a bit of it. And we could pull a map out and identify more of the features, but in any case, nice image. Okay, and next, Mars, Mark captured the occultation of Mars by the moon. So we'll see that in a video.
Guys, it's squeaking behind the moon, and it'll be a bloody long time for it to come out the other side. There you go. Nice end.
I heard somebody speaking there, but I don't know who it was.
I think the one capturing the video, I think it was in the video.
Yeah, there's probably something.
Well, that's odd, because I played that like 20 times. I've never had a voiceover on it.
Okay. He said, there it goes.
I think that's somebody else in Mark. Mark, was that you telling us about that?
I don't think so.
No, it's not me.
Okay. Okay. So next up, we have the Lion Nebula. This is in deep sky, so quite a few things have changed here. He switched to reducer on the telescope, so now 762 millimeter focal length, SHO narrowband filters, a cooled monochrome camera. It's actually a little bit larger than an APS-C sensor. Guide camera, sequence generator pro for controlling the whole system and capturing the data. This exposure is sub exposures are 5 minutes with a total of 28 hours or so. Processing mostly in PixInsight and then finishing up in Photoshop. And so here's the Lion. This is a pretty wide field of view for the Lion. There's a lot of faint nebulosity around the periphery. For the Lion itself, the first question most people ask is, how is that a lion?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, imagine that this is one of his paws coming out here, and this is the other front paw. Here's the body of the lion, rear paw. Don't know if you want to call it a rear paw, and there's maybe one extra paw in this, but it's got a nice tail coming around the back. So as far as the head goes, the MGM lion has nothing to worry about. No one's gonna, this lion is not gonna roar and be recognized too well from its head. Okay. Next up, we have photos by Dana Wright. Dana, are you in here tonight? No, that's not good. Okay. And his first one is the Witch's Broom in HOO narrowband, including parts of Pickering's Triangle. He images mostly from his own observatory in his backyard, uses a Lost Manny G11 mount, an aperture of 6-inch Newtonian with a paracore corrector, and an Optec motorized focuser at this point. Focal length is 610 millimeters, so it gives him a pretty wide field of view, 1.44 by 1.08 degrees. His camera is a monochrome CCD camera with a built-in off-axis guider, APS-C size, and he does use a guide camera in order to guide. And then the computer, again, Windows Control Software Sequence Generator Pro. In this case, total exposure, he can't remember the exact number at the moment, but 15 to 20 hours, he said. So, and the processing software is PixInsight. So there's his image of the Witch's Broom. The Witch's Broom is the structure up at the top with the star. It's part of the Veil supernova remnant, as is Pickering's Triangle. We're only really seeing part of Pickering's Triangle down here. This is considerably fainter actually than this part. And so there are a lot of images out there that you'll see framing the witch's head, and then this will just barely be visible down here. But Dana's been able to capture quite a bit of Pickering's Triangle there to go with the witch's head, or witch's broom rather. Okay, next he has the Heart Nebula in SHO. This is the Hubble palette. Again, narrow band. And let's see, any other changes? Nope. So here's the heart. The powering star or stars are in this vicinity. There's a particularly notable, I forget what the designation is, but there's a star cluster in there. And what happens when you have a particularly strong star is the solar wind and all the UV light coming out of it shapes the dust and the gas in the nebula around it and pushes away a lot, but also shapes what's not being pushed away. So typically what you'll see is that either dust like this will point back toward the powering star, or you'll see maybe a cone shape like that that's pointing back. But the dust features generally will point toward whatever star is really driving or really shaping the nebula. Okay. Next, he has the Fish Head Nebula in SHO. Same basic setup again. So the fish head is separated from the body by the dust you see here. There's the body, there's the fish, the head rather, and he's got a bit of an eye socket there. Fins or the flippers are either moving too fast to see or they're stuck in the mud, however you want to imagine that, if you want to try to imagine more detail to it. But it makes a decent fish. So and Astrophoto. And we're ready for Ryan. So I'm going to turn over to Ryan for a moment here.
Hey there, everyone. My name's I'm Ryan, in case anyone doesn't know me. Now, this is photography equipment. Oh, you can. So I believe there is an astrophotography genre for everyone. And whether or not you, like, I don't know if everyone here takes astrophotos or not, but yeah, okay. Yeah. So if you're just taking regular photos with a phone or something like that, just for you know, places you go, things you see, that's great. And if you have an interest in astronomy, also great. Those two things work very well together. So I want to go over a broad overview of some of the many genres of astrophotography, some of which you may not have heard of. And we're going to start with landscape astrophotography, which is grand sweeping views of the night sky. This kind of thing is done with relatively simple equipment. A regular camera, like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, that's all you need, and a regular tripod, meaning no polar alignment, no tracking, or anything like that. This is Death Valley, and the thing that is lighting the foreground here is the full moon, which was behind the camera. This is not something that requires dark skies or exotic locations, so it can be done locally. This is in Delaware, near Dover, Delaware, actually Dover Air Force Base, near there. This is a light polluted area and there's planes going all around, but cameras do have ways of seeing through light pollution a little bit better than the human eyes can. Also local, this is just a farm stay that I did. There was a tractor in the field that looked neat to me. So that's an astrophotography opportunity. One reason why I think everyone should be into astrophotography is because these might just be astrophotos to you, but remember, to me, they're also memories. So I want to point out something here. If you're familiar with this object, this is the Large Magellanic Cloud, which is a dwarf galaxy near to our own. It's only visible in the southern hemisphere, so that might give you a hint of where I was. And this is the skeleton of a eucalyptus tree here because this was in Australia. This is Arches National Park in Utah. And I do want to pause for just a little bit and talk about lighting. These are generally kind of long-ish exposures, like 5 to 20 seconds maybe. And so if you're trying to light something, and the foreground lighting on this one was me, if you just have a flashlight with you, a narrow beam flashlight can light a pretty broad area. If you have a long exposure, you just waggle the flashlight around, and even a narrow beam of a flashlight can light paint as much or as little as you want in the foreground while you're taking your photos. So just a handheld flashlight, even the lighting equipment, very simple on this kind of stuff. So far we've been looking at photos where the shutter is quick enough that it freezes the stars in the sky, but you can do the opposite. You can expose for many hours and get star trails. Jeff Lawrence did a mini talk on how to do star trails with a cell phone, maybe like a year ago or something like that. So you can refer back to that if you want to know how to do this with just a phone. This is about a 3-hour exposure here. This one I think was about 2 hours. I call this the great hay bale in the sky. Because look at this shape, look at that shape, and that shape there. If you expose practically all night, many, many hours, so many stars will drift through the field of view of your camera that they almost turn into a solid object, like a luminous curtain behind whatever it is you're photographing. Now, in this case, these ones are curving downward because they're rotating around the North Pole, and those are curving upwards because they're rotating around the celestial South Pole. And then somewhere in the middle here, I think the celestial equator, there should be a perfectly straight line somewhere in there. This one was done with film, which is why it's black and white, and it's a film camera. But the point here is to prove that you don't need state-of-the-art equipment to do this kind of thing. This is a cliff in West Virginia, and 2 rock climbers at night with flashlights climbed up this zigzag path of this little cliff here and then rappelled down, which is that straight line.
Seneca Rocks.
Seneca Rocks.
I was there
yeah.
last week.
Oh, isn't it great? So another thing, another genre that of astrophotography that you might consider doing is auroras. These are all from Iceland last year, but if we get lucky and if the sun cooperates, who knows, maybe we could do this here in the next year. The techniques and the equipment for this is essentially identical to all the other photos that we've seen. Basic cameras, regular tripod. Overall, I think it's pretty approachable. Here's something you might not have considered. So rocket launches. These used to be a favorite of mine. They've actually slowed down the launch cadence at Wallops Island, but this is in Virginia at Wallops Island. It's a Cygnus rocket. And I like the night launches because I like long exposures. To give you a sense of how long this is, it was about 2 minutes for the rocket to take off from here to get out of the frame. This is a different launch, another night launch, and it was cloudy. I didn't know how it would turn out, but I actually really like this one a lot because it looks like sort of like an alien attack or like maybe a weird lightning or something. But it's at night, so the only light source is the rocket. It was lighting up the clouds from below when it was here, and then after it pierced through the cloud layer, it was lighting up the clouds from above. And then way at the top there, about 1.5 minutes into the exposure, it sort of peeked through the clouds just a little bit again.
So more than 1 minute exposure?
Yeah, this is about a 2-ish minute exposure. Yeah. Comets. So the way to take a picture of a comet, again, basically identical to the landscape astrophotography. Everything there is the same. This is Comet Neowise, which is a few years ago. Yeah. I don't normally carry a flashlight with me that would be bright enough to light up these distant cliffs, but luckily I didn't have to because the headlights of a car going through did that for me. Yeah. And once again, sometimes these are just for the memories. This is last October. The comet starts with the T. I forget the name. I should have known like 8 different coordinates. Yeah, of course. So a naked eye visible object, even with the light pollution of a city skyline right there. It doesn't have to be an award-winning photo or anything like that, but it's just for the memories. And I like looking back on this stuff. So one last thing, and this is where it gets weird. So I'm going to need you to sort of stick with me on this one. If you take a light-proof container and you poke a tiny pinhole in it, you have a pinhole camera. Yeah. And if you take a piece of light-sensitive paper, photo paper, like from the darkroom, and you put that in the container opposite of the pinhole, it'll record whatever your pinhole camera is looking at or taking a picture of. So the thing about black and white photo paper is it will show a visible image if the light hitting it is bright enough for long enough. It never has to even touch any photographic chemicals. So you can take your pinhole camera, mount it somewhere looking at the sun, and leave it there for weeks, months, or even a year. Never blocking the pinhole, just always exposing. And after a very long time, which could be a year or more, when you open it up and take out the piece of paper, what you'll have is a visible image of not very much. It's a ghostly image. It almost has a little weird rainbow on it, and you can't really see what's going on, but I really do have one in here, but stop it. So what you do is you take a digital photo of this piece of paper and you invert the image and you add a lot of contrast, and then it reveals your final image. This is the main dome of Mount Cuba, right over there. And this rainbow thing behind it is the sun. Every day, the sun goes up and goes through the sky. In the winter, it's a little lower, and in the summer, it goes very high. And every one of those days is recorded here. So the solid lines are sunny days, and dashed and dotted lines are partly cloudy days. And the totally missing streaks, these are fully cloudy days where the sun never came out for that whole day. This one was actually done right before COVID, like just a couple weeks before COVID. And I asked Dave Grosky if it would be okay if I just like zip tie a few weird hands at the top of the observatory, and he said yes. I didn't realize that we would all be in lockdown for the next year, but I got it out, by the way. I already showed you a picture. There's really nothing here. This isn't the final product. You take a picture of this and invert it.
Cool.
But yeah, it wasn't until a year later when I was able to get back on the roof of Mount Cuba and retrieve my little cans and see what they had been taking a photo of. So this is actually a record of all of our COVID lockdowns.
And you had no idea what was going to be on that film.
You never know until you take it out and actually take a picture of it and process it. In fact, I put 4 up there, but the success rate is pretty low. So sometimes like an angry woodpecker or like a mad squirrel just like start eating it or something and ruin it. 2 of them on Mount Cuba moved halfway through. So this is actually one of the ones that moved. There's like one rainbow and then like an offset rainbow, because I think it like partly rotated. So yeah, like this is a long project. You don't know how it's going to end, but here's the thing. This is actually my last slide. That's my time. My point is, astrophotography doesn't have to be expensive. You can do it with actual literal garbage. And part of the fun is that you might not know what's gonna come of it, but there's not much risk in wasting a little piece of garbage. So very nice. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. All your photos in the future version.
So now I'm going to tell you about a third of my best photos from the last couple of years, 2.5 years. And start off here. I do most of my imaging from the Spencer Observatory, which Rick Spencer and I built in his backyard about 5.5 years ago. Nice low horizon, and in more recent years, I've computerized the roof so that the system can open and close on its own based on weather, and also can be controlled remotely. Here's the main imaging scope. It's a 10-inch Cassegrain with a corrector. And there's a second a reducer that comes along with that drops it down from 1250 millimeter focal length to 889 millimeters. It's on an Astrophysics 1100 mount. And of course, there's a computer out of the field of view that controls the whole thing. For an extra wide field of view, we piggyback mounted a 3.3 inch refractor, the FSQ 85. And use that. And the very first picture I'm going to show you actually uses that wide field refractor. Okay, so the effective focal length here is 450 millimeters, f5.3. And move that out of my way. 4.5 by 3 degree field of view. I'm using my EOS 6D DSLR because that's a wide field, that's a full frame sensor. And the CCD camera we have for this is not a full frame sensor. So that gives a larger field of view. Self-built Windows 10 desktop again, Sequence Generator Pro, as you've seen a couple other guys use. In this case, 30-second sub exposures and a total of 24.5 minutes. The unusual thing here is that the images are both star aligned and comet aligned. That's a bit of a trick. And I talk about how to do that, or at least give you a summary in the March 2023 focus. All of my images at the bottom of the text screen here have the month and year of that it was published in the focus. And if you can't make a note, I happen to have a list of all of them here if anybody wants to dig in and go back into the focus for that. Okay, so here's the image itself. You can see the ion trail going off to the right to the edge of the field of view. Nice green coma. But the dust tail is doing something a little odd. Basically, the comet's in the middle of making a turn, and the dust tail is kind of coming out this way and then hooking back down that way. And so this part's known as the anti-tail. In a short amount of time, the anti-tail disappears, and then the dust tail just extends out alongside the ion tail. Okay, next up is the Black Eye Galaxy, or M64. This is the Cassegrain at native focal length of 1,250 millimeters, about 15 hours of exposure time, guided as usual, and using a CCD camera here, APS-C size. So here's the Black Eye Galaxy. And of course, the challenge with a lot of galaxies is many of them are very small. So it's difficult to capture a gigantic amount of detail. You have to be on your game in terms of keeping the image sharp and guiding and all that in order to be able to show detail on small objects like this. But there is definitely some detail in the Black Eye Galaxy near the core. One interesting thing about this galaxy is that the outer part rotates opposite of the inner part. The suggestion is that is a result of collision between two galaxies a very long time ago. And I guess the rotational momentum just hasn't been counteracted between the two rotating areas. Okay. I compared the core of this, or the central part of this rather, with a Hubble image, and feature by feature you can find evidence for everything you see here in the Hubble image. So none of this is artifact or overprocessing or anything like that. It's real detail in this object. Okay, next up, the Triangulum Galaxy M33. Okay, this is done with the Cassegrain scope and a focal reducer, 13.1 hours. And I captured both RGB and narrowband data, the hydrogen and oxygen data for this. So here's the LRGB version. You can see there's a number of obvious nebula. There's not as much structure as in your typical grand design galaxy like M101 or M51, but you do see the spiral arms. What's nice about M33 for imaging is that this is the second biggest galaxy, and so it takes up a fair area of view, fair field of view, and also it's fairly bright. But the real thing that I like about this is that the nebula in this take up a really large, rather, compared to many other galaxies. And on top of that, in this case, this is a HOO image, narrowband. So you can see that the nebula on the outside on the periphery of the galaxy are strong in oxygen. That's why you're getting the teal color. And as you go farther into the middle of the galaxy, the strength of the oxygen is dropping off relative to hydrogen. Okay, so think about that for a moment. These are not nebula in the Milky Way galaxy like most of the nebula photos you see. These are extragalactic nebula in a completely different galaxy. Okay. Okay, next I have the Rosette Nebula. This is a two-panel mosaic because it was too large for the field of view of the reducer and Cassegrain scope at the time. 18.3 hours total exposure time. Here's the RGB version. And here's the SHO version. Okay. One interesting thing about this nebula is that the powering stars that are in the middle of it here have cleared a big section of the nebula in the center. So it's essentially going dark in the center because there's not enough material there to excite anymore and give us the emission. There's also an interesting bubble there. And in the SHO image, you can readily see in the blue areas here, that's where oxygen is strong. The yellow gold areas along the shock front are where sulfur is particularly strong, sulfur emission, I should say. I'm going to compare the two. There's HOO on the left, SHO on the right, and I can even, I think, see if I can find this. Okay, we'll zoom in here a bit. Field of view is a little bit narrower than I'm used to, so that's probably not a good idea. Let's get back here. I seem to have lost the little controls at the bottom.
Might have to exit the presentation to see that.
Pardon?
Might have to exit the presentation.
Yeah, I might have to. Oh, no, there we go. That did it. That did it. Okay, correct. Okay. So next I have M81 and M82 in a couple of different forms. So M81 has some structure to it, but the contrast isn't very high. So it takes some work, it takes a fair amount of data and some image processing to really bring that out. And I'm going to zoom in right away or show you the enlargement. This, the red channel is hydrogen enhanced so you can better see the emission nebula in M81. And you'll notice it's just tiny little pockets scattered around. It's not anywhere near as big an area of the galaxy as you got with M33. Let's see. Here's M82. That's a starburst galaxy and apparently ejecting material out along the perpendicular axis of the galaxy. So in a way, you might say this is no longer part of M82, in which case that's extragalactic nebula in every sense of the word. But if you think of that as belonging to M82, then it's just not in our galaxy. It's in another galaxy. Okay, Elephant's Trunk Nebula is next. Okay, here's the HOO version. And by the way, all of my HOO and RGB images are color calibrated based on reference stars in the image. So that this is showing you the true color, the HOO image and the RGB image would be showing you the true color of the nebula, which of course is going to be dominated, is going to be red because hydrogen dominates emission nebula. Okay, you can see a little switch over toward gray or green up here where oxygen starts to become strong, but still the overall color is red. Here's the SHO version. And there's a lot of interesting dust structures there, but the main structure of interest is the elephant trunk here. It's known as the elephant trunk, I think, primarily because there's a hole at the end, just like the trunk of an elephant. So, okay. Next, I'm going to show you the Sol Nebula. Okay. Here's a view of stellarium that's showing the Soul Nebula. I'm only going to show you part of it, the part shown in the rectangle here. But if you look at this, you can kind of see there are two parts to the Soul Nebula. There's a larger upper part and then a smaller lower part. These are kind of like two separate lobes, if you will. And you'll see why that is in just a moment. Here's the HOO version. And now the SHO version. And if you look at the dust structures in this lower lobe, you can see pretty much they're pointing up into the middle area here where you have the bright star there. Even this structure up here is pointing down toward it. But if you look a little further up into the upper lobe, now the structures are pointing up and away. Okay, and so that's pretty good evidence that there are really two different stars that are exciting the different parts of the Soul Nebula. At least one for the upper part and at least one for the lower part. Zooming in a little bit more, you can see more detail in the dust structures and everything that's going on in that interface between the two of them, between the two parts. Next, I have the Bubble Nebula. This is the HOO version. And this was, let's see, native focal length. So this is a relatively small nebula. And the bubble itself is even smaller than the overall nebula. And properly color balanced, it shows up as white. Okay. There are some structural features to the bubble. It's not just a simple bubble. Okay, if we switch to the SHO version, because oxygen is strong in bubbles of all types. Every bubble I've ever photographed, the oxygen has been strong in the bubble structure. In this case, it's showing up as blue because in SHO, oxygen is mapped to the blue channel. Okay. And again, here you can compare. I've sized it up and rotated it so that it's a match for the Hubble image in terms of general appearance. And you can look at the details in this, like we've got a Y down here, we've got a Y in the Hubble version, we've got a curve with something crossing it, same thing over here. Piece by piece, you can go through that and you'll find evidence for everything in my image somewhere in the Hubble image, in the right location in the Hubble image. Now, I'm not suggesting that my image is as good as the Hubble. If you download the Hubble image, and you can zoom in and see dramatically finer detail. A few $1 billion and a couple of heroic space missions buy something in terms of imaging capability. So, but in terms of structural detail, none of this is artifact, none of this is fake or anything that accidentally went wrong. Okay, next up, M51. Okay, and again, this is not a large enough galaxy to fill the field of view, even with the 1250 millimeter focal length. But it does have enough contrast that with proper processing, you can bring out a fair amount of detail in it. So can everybody see the light curve up here? Okay,
Yeah.
that is a tidal stream of stars. I guess it's actually more visible up there than it is on my monitor. That have been, from my understanding, basically thrown out into space by the dynamics of these two galaxies interacting. So the one thing that always amazes me about this pair is how much beautiful structure and order there is to M51, and what a train wreck its companion galaxy is. Now, maybe it's a case of it was a train wreck long before it came along and ran into the M51, but it just strikes me as amazing that you can have such a highly ordered galaxy right next to another one that's fallen apart at the seams. Interestingly, the core of M51 is actually dimmer than the core of the companion galaxy. I would not have guessed that, but. Okay, moving on, have the Horsehead Nebula here. So a few years ago, I photographed the Horsehead Nebula in narrow band and a wider field of view, captured the Flame Nebula, but this reflection nebula didn't come out at all well. And couldn't really see detail in the nebula. And I knew that there were striations in the nebula behind the Horsehead. So I went at it again in RGB with a tighter field of view. And my wife, by the way, saw this and said, "Oh, look at that. There's a dragon. There's his head, and here's his wing. Here's his other wing." And so if only we jumped on that a little sooner, maybe this would be the Dragon Nebula instead of the Horsehead Nebula. Okay. Enlarging it a little bit, now you can see some of these striations. You've got a bright band and a dark band, another bright band, another dark, and so on. And that carries on through here, up in this area, a little bit down in here, and definitely in this area. And what I've read is that this is a result of some magnetic phenomenon that's basically ordering the nebula. So I don't know any more about it than that, but if somebody knows more, I'd certainly like to hear it.
Is that another Horsehead to the left?
Are you thinking this?
That, yeah.
It can be, if you want it to be.
So imagine,
It's almost a complete
Full
loop.
imagination.
It's almost a camel. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, people.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then so next I have the Pleiades and its reflection nebula. Okay, and let's see, 13 hours total integration time. This is, of course, the largest of the reflection nebula that we can see from our sky, in our sky, but it may even be the largest from any that you can see anywhere on the planet. I don't know about the southern hemisphere. And one interesting thing about this is there's actually structure in the dust here. It's not just a diffuse cloud. It's you can see a couple of parallel bands here and then striations in there. Plenty of striations in the left and the right areas here. And I'm going to go to an enlargement here so you can see some of that detail a little bit better. Okay. Curiously, this dust cloud is actually moving at a substantially different speed than the stars that are illuminating it. So in the future, who knows how far in the future, but this could look different as the dust drifts through the field of view. And next I have the Tulip Nebula. 29 hours of integration time. The RGB version is on the left here, and then HOO. And these are both, as I said before, color calibrated. And if you look at the nebula, I think the color in the HOO version came out a pretty good match for the RGB. Maybe a little bit more saturated, but overall red is red, and there's a little bit of a purple here that also shows up there. Okay. HOO has some advantages in that being narrowband, it knocks out a lot of light pollution, so it's easier to get the signal and noise you want. And also, it knocks down the stars. There are a lot of nebulas that are interesting to photograph, but they are overpowered by the stars that are in the vicinity. And so the HOO has an advantage for that as well. Here's an SHO version of the that I created of the Tulip Nebula. And up and to the right here, there's sort of a parabolic structure, kind of a dark purple. That's pretty visible up there. So let's zoom in just a little bit. That is reportedly a bow shock emission nebula that's generated by a relativistic jet emanating from the accretion disk of Cygnus X1, which is down in this neighborhood where its companion star is. So it amazes me what the distance there, and of course that's got to be blowback of material from the accretion disk. So not everything goes through the event horizon and disappears into a black hole. Some material obviously gets shot out at a pretty good clip. Okay. And I think this is the last one, the Cygnus Wall region of North America, of the North American Nebula in a couple of different forms, 37 hours integration time. This is the true color HOO version of the nebula, and we'll switch right off to the SHO version. It's easier to see where the oxygen is showing up, and the blue helps give you some color contrast with other parts of the image. Sulfur is bright right along the shock front where the solar wind and all the UV light from the star that's powering the nebula is hitting the denser collection of dust and gas along that shock front. Zooming in on the left, you can see a couple of dust columns here that are pointing upward at a 45-degree angle. The whole thing looks a bit like a mountain to me. And then in the middle, you've got another dust column. Now it's more like 30 degrees relative to the vertical. And over here, we're starting to get closer to straight up and down. So all of the lines from these dust features are generally pointing in the direction of the star that, as it happens, we already know is powering the nebula. It's called the Bahamar star, and it's let me back up a bit. It's behind. It's actually out of the field of view of this image, behind the Lyn's Dark Nebula, which knocks it down in brightness by about 10 magnitudes. Okay, that's the end of part one. This image is in the focus, so I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm pretty much out of time for sure anyway. So,
Very good. All right. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Give me 1 second to bring this up. Okay, this is part 2 of the DAS Astrophoto Showcase. So the first 2 presentations you're going to see are mine and Ron's. And the reason for that is because we're not really in the automated section, although Ron is somewhat, because he has a C-star and a couple of his are C-stars. But I personally don't own a C-star or an automated telescope. I'm just facilitating this part of the presentation. So mine's going to be first, just to be in that transition period between the 2. All right, so let's get started. So several of the people aren't here, so I'll talk a little bit about theirs. If you are here, feel free to tell us about your photo. So first of all, this is me and a number of the astrophotos I've taken over the years. You should note that in this picture here, you have my setup. Lost Mandy G11 mount, and it's a telescope mounted on top that's a reflector. I have a couple different reflectors. I have a smaller one and I have a bigger one that's 6-inch and one that's 10-inch. And I also have a homemade telescope here. I also have several DSLRs and astronomy cameras as well. So I do switch back and forth between the different things because I really think it's not about having one system. It's about having a system that's tuned for what you want to do. And so you can swap back and forth between different cameras, between different telescopes, and you can use the same mount for all of it. So your stuff is interchangeable. A number of years ago, I showed an image I called the Mexican Space Dragon. And the Mexican Space Dragon was this portion of the North American Nebula. And it focuses on the Mexico region of that. And you can see there's lovely nebulosity around in here. This image adds additional color because this image included H-alpha, O3, and sulfur as well. My previous one was an HOO image. This one's an HOS image. So it adds additional detail to the photo. This is an image I took with just a DSLR. It was at Brandywine Creek State Park in October. As Ryan said earlier, these kind of images can be like a memory. And I definitely appreciated that time at Brandywine Creek State Park. It was an absolutely spectacular aurora. It's the brightest one I've ever seen in aurora was in the south, it was in the north, it was overhead, it was all kinds of crazy colors. It was amazing. So hopefully we get more of those during this solar maximum. So you can see here the date, and you can see here that it was about 2.5 seconds, and in Brandywine Creek State Park with just my camera on a tripod. No fancy equipment, just a DSLR on a tripod. This is another image that I did fairly recently. This is the Heart Nebula, just like its very center. And this particular image included H alpha, sulfur, and O3. This one is HSO. So it's different from the last one in that I swapped whether the sulfur was in the green or the blue. So I swapped the O3 and the sulfur between the two, just because it artistically made a nicer image. This is the Wizard Nebula. This is one I imaged many years ago in HOO. Adding the sulfur made it a lot prettier with the additional like yellowish tint that it added to the picture. So I think that was a great addition. And you can see here, it's an HOS image. So H alpha, O3, and sulfur. This is the Crescent Nebula. I've done the Crescent a large number of times because I think it's a really pretty one, just like the Veil. I just like taking pictures of it over and over and over. This one, again, is different from previous ones I did because it added in the sulfur, and that made it really pretty. So this is HOS. This is an image I did last year of the sun. It is a sunspot, and you can see all the interesting magnetic field lines guiding the plasma along, and the sunspot there in the middle. You see some granulation around the edges. And this was with my refractor. Please note that this refractor is fairly cheap. It was only like $300 when I first bought it. It doesn't need to be super fancy because it is a narrow band image. It's hydrogen alpha, so it does not need a super fancy refractor that costs $3,000 to do it. So the mount was inexpensive, telescope was inexpensive. The quark, however, was very expensive. But you know, all the other parts were cheap. Even the camera was cheap. You know, you can get a ZW120 for like $100 nowadays. Ron? Oh, I did want to also point out, I forgot, I made this a couple years ago. It's a book I produced for my nephew. And in that book, I have a number of the photos that I've taken with descriptions and stuff like that. So if you're ever wondering, like, what can you do with all these astrophotos you've taken? Why don't you check this out? Because it might be a nice gift that you could give to your nieces, nephews, grandchildren, just to pass on your great astrophotography that you did. And this one is a mixed book, I believe, but there's a number of online sources you can use to produce these things.
Calendars are another good one.
Oh yeah, calendars, yeah, absolutely. Ron, did you want to press the buttons?
I guess.
So the forward and back is here. You can push on here, or you can use this. There's a laser is right there. Okay. Laser's that little red one. Okay. I'll sit over here.
Okay. This here is my new setup that I have that I put together in middle of 2024. The Sharp Star. Oops, wait a minute. Can I get it back?
Yeah, you can get back. Hold on.
Oops, there it is.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Anyhow, so I replaced the mead with this. And this is my setup now. This was the original at my Broadfield that I did from scratch. I built this roll-off building. And this I moved to Bear. This is all in Bear right here in Bear with a warm room. And that's my best friend.
And that's what it's named for, right?
Yeah. This is the M64 Black Eye. And all will be the same. The mount is a G11 guided with differing. And the guider is the 60 millimeter Prime Lucy Lab f4 240 millimeter with the ZWO 174 auto guider. They do not change. And the other thing that doesn't change is the Pix Insight Paint Shop Pro. And so this was M64, April the 1st, with the ST 4000 S-Big. And it's always 0 degrees Fahrenheit, one-shot color, and it was 12 5-minute exposures for 1 hour. And the frame was 33 by 33 arc minutes. This is M31. And it was November the 12th. And this was what the ED 102 Explorer Scientific, got it backwards, refractor F7 714 millimeters. And the ZWO was a 2600. And it was sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen 3 nanometer narrowband filters, 39 5 minutes for 3.25 hours, 12 in the sulfurs in the red channel, 12 hydrogen in the green channels, and 15 oxygen in the blue channels. And that's 75 by 5, 0.5 by 113 arc minutes. This is M92. And this was May the 31st. And this was my Sharp Star SCA 260 F5. And that was the super the astrograph. And it's not a Schmitz cascade. It's more on the Ritchie Crichton style because it doesn't have the front plate. It's 1300 millimeters. And the camera is a 1071 one-shot color from ZWO. And that was 17 5-minute exposures for 1.41 hours. 41.5 by 62.4 arc minutes. This here is M51, and the Pix Insight has very nice annotating program. So I kind of like to do this once in a while. So it's gave us a IC 4278, IC 4277, the NGC 5195, and of course the Whirlpool itself. And this one right here is hidden down here in the corner.
You can move that if you want.
That one right there, it snuck in, IC 4263. But that, I just did that for fun. I got it without that too, but anyway. And that was February the 8th. Excuse me. Sharp Star again. And my one-shot color, 15 5-minute exposures for 1.25 hours, 41.5 by 62.4. And I do my program for running is K-Stars and Echo, and that calculates the arc minutes, and when you're observing. I got a frog in my throat. M66, again, annotated, NGC 3628. This is Leo triplet with the M65, M66. And then the IC 2694 snuck in up there. Oops, I got a buzzball there, but anyhow. January 30th, Sharp Star again. And the one-shot color, 11 5-minute exposures for 55 minutes, 41.5 and 62.4. I don't take extremely long exposures because of time. California Nebula, this is only part of it. Anyhow, that's 11 November the 1st. And 102 Explorer Scientific Refractor, that's 714. And that's the 2600 black and white. And that's the 3 nanometer narrow bands, and that's sulfur and hydrogen. And that's 24 5-minute ones for 2 hours, 12 sulfur in the red, 12 hydrogen in the green, and 12 hydrogen in the blue. So it's SHH, yeah. 75.5 by 113 arc minutes. And this is the Flame Nebula. That kind of, so they kind of worked out, I guess. So this is February 1st. And it was the, again, Sharp Star. That's on a good scope. And the 071, again, one shot. And it's 12 5-minute light frames for an hour, 41.5 and a 62.4 arc minutes. And this is my, the smart scope, C Star 50. That's just a shot at the sun. This, I don't have a good horizon where I am, and it's all in bare Delaware. And so I had to go to a field. And that is the craziest little thing. Is smarter than me by a long shot. And so I went to a field and I just put it down in the field in the dirt with a tripod. And it started it up with my iPad. And I did a calculate, and you calculate it by, there's a ring, and you turn it around and around and around and around until that ring closes. And that calibrates the compass. And then that stinker was looking just the opposite way. And I thought, okay. So I pushed a button I went to the comet, and I pushed a button for it to go to it. And it went to opposite things, stayed there a minute. And it was plate solving, of course, all along. And then it'd move another, and then it'd move again. And then it just stayed there for almost like 30 seconds. I'm thinking, okay, it failed. But then it started up and went right to it, and bam, it was on it. Just like that. And so, and then, let's see, wait a minute. And then I took, that's an ion tail, I guess. That was interesting. Right, anti-tail. And so, then I took a number of exposures, and then it stacked it and aligned it. But then once I got everything from that, I put it into PixInsight and did a better, I tried to do a little bit better. But not all the time does it do good in deep sky. But the point is, when it does line and stack, you can always take it and save it into your PixInsight or your better software to process it more, and you can get a better picture. So anyhow,
Okay.
So I've never had the anti-tail before, so that kind of did nice, but whatever. So that's it.
Cool. Thank you. All right, and now the rest of the presentations that we have were all done with automated telescopes such as the C-Star. And I'm going to do my best to present these. Some people might be present. If you're here, please feel free to present your own stuff. So the first item is the Sombrero Galaxy that he took. It was in his backyard in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and it was with a laptop along with the C-Star and processed in Serial and Photoshop. Leo triplet, you can see that's similar to what Ron was showing a minute ago, similar target. You got M65, M66, and I think it's called the Hamburger Galaxy is the third one. Whoop, I'm sorry, I hit that too fast. And you can see here are the details for that. It's a C-star along with the laptop, and it's about 3 hours of exposure. The Silver Needle Galaxy. That was also done in Westchester with the C-star and the laptop for 3 hours. Jeff Miller. Do you want to sit here? I mean, you could come up here, or you could sit here. You should sit here, I think. And you can hit the forward arrow, or you can hit that. Whatever you like.
So these are all taken with my C-Star S50, all from my backyard in Lincoln University for various periods of time. All right, so image on the left is NGC 2175, the Monkey Head Nebula. That's a 90-minute exposure. The filter is in use. And you know, in all cases, yes, it's stacking, it's saving it. All the images, every 10-second image is saved in the C-Star, but I basically have it transfer over to my iPhone and I massage it, if you would, to reduce the background using the photo app in the iPhone. Okay, the middle image. Using what app? Just the Photos app that it stores it into. You can edit a picture if you want to. One of the things you can do is reduce noise. There's 4 or 5 things you can do.
Sure, the free app that's in the phone.
Yep. Middle picture is Markarian's chain. Rob, this is like you. This is one I particularly like.
I think for
No, that's on the end. I'm sorry. The one in the middle is M99. Yeah, M99. Hard to see.
you should be able to see it on there too, right?
Oh, you're right. And that's a 70-minute exposure. Okay. Markarian's chain is the image on the right. You can, in fact, find all 18 galaxies hidden in there. I just particularly like that image. I've taken 2 or 3 shots of that. This is M42, obviously, on the left. It's a 10-minute exposure. It takes, the image size is 0.79 by 1.29 degrees. And it's a little hard to get all of that into it. But with the mosaic mode that they came out with about a year ago, which is the center image, you can expand the field up to basically double that. What you give up is it's taking images around and adding them all together. So it takes longer. So that took, what, 46 minutes, but it takes a pretty good image. The one on the right is the Silver Sliver Galaxy NGC 891, and that's 20 minutes. Oh yeah. This is obviously M31. This is in mosaic mode. If you try to take that, you get about 1/4 to 1/2 in just standard mode. You just can't get it all in. But with mosaic mode, you can in fact put everything into the image. And that is, I think, 76 minutes. So that's what I got. Anyway.
Thank you. All right, Rob Tuttle, and I don't believe he's here either. So he has the Veil Nebula here, which in my opinion, I love the Veil Nebula. I love the intertwined hydrogen alpha and O3 tendrils. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I love taking pictures of that. And so you can see here some details. It was taken in Newark, Delaware in October with the C-Star. And the total exposure time was 2,000 seconds or so. He took that image and he turned it into an abstract landscape. He composed it with the washerwoman photo from the Mesa Arch. He used Topaz and Photoshop to do that. And if you want to know more, you can look up on Wikipedia, the Washerwoman and the Mesa Arch and the Veil Nebula. Here's a photo he took of M42. And the details are on the left. So it was taken with a C star. And this is only about 30 minutes of exposure processed in Photoshop. Richard Steinberg, I think he was here. Dick Steinberg, did you want to talk about your section? You're muted right now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Can definitely hear you, yeah.
Okay,
I can
great.
advance the slides and you can talk about them.
Yeah, hi. I'm having a little problem here, and that is that the server, which has all my images, is down. So I can't do something right now, but
Can you see what we're showing? Because I can just share your thing.
yeah. So there's a story. There's a picture of it looks like a star, and its magnitude is modest, 12.6. So it's not visible to the naked eye, but it's not that far below. So you can see this thing with the sea star. And that's so I took this picture, which it's not coming up here, but oh, there it is. Oh, okay. So Rob has, here it is. Okay, so this is the whole field. This was my S50. And this object, which I'm going to point it out to you, but if you don't watch carefully, you won't see. Okay, can you see the arrow there pointing sort of in the middle?
No, because you're not sharing the
It's only
presentation.
on my screen. Okay. Well, if you look right in the middle. So one of the things I learned about this that I find really useful.
Is it near here?
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, good. One of the fine things about the sea star is that you can point it to a precise object in the sky, as long as, of course, you need the RA and the deck, and you program that as a user object, I think they call it, or something like that. And then you define the coordinates to be for that user object to be the appropriate coordinates. And then you say you go to that object and it goes. It's an amazing little telescope. I'm a veteran of astrophysics, $50,000 setup that I had up in Blue Mountain. But this is a couple $100 telescope, and it's right on my back deck, so I can do it. I'm too old to go to carrying big telescopes around. But if you look carefully on this picture, I'm pointing it to the middle. I don't know if you can see me, but right in the middle, there's a not very obvious triangle,
That's this
and
one,
it's
right?
really centered. So if you can, your eye can follow. Yeah, there. Okay, you're doing it. There you go. The upper left. Yep, the upper left star of that triangle. You see that little triangle there? Rob, can you? Yeah, okay. Whoever's controlling it, that's it. Okay, there's an enlargement in it. The next picture has an enlargement in that. But this is the sea star, and the object that you see, although it looks like an ordinary star, is not. It is a quasar. Okay, so look at the upper one of these, and you'll see that's the actual sea star image. And I have annotated it so you can see which one. It's the one right. It's in the center of the circle. That is called 3C273, which is an object, and it was discovered in the 50s. And the thing was, it was anomalous. And the reason it was discovered was because it was a strong radio emitter. And it made it into the 3C, which is the third Cambridge catalog of radio sources. And it was the object number 273. So there's at least 272 other objects in the catalog, which you feel free to explore. But this one was weird because it has a large, it was not understood what was going on. It had a weird spectrum and nobody could figure out what the heck it is. So it turned out that the reason the spectrum was hard to understand is because it had an enormous redshift. And the redshift was such here, the numbers are in my little paper here. So the normal H alpha line, as most of you know, is 656 nanometers. Yeah, there you go. And it was shifted toward the red, to longer wavelengths, to 760, which you may not think is a lot, but it is a lot. It's considered to be a 15% redshift. So the redshift parameter is 0.158. So it's the fractional increase in wavelength due to the redshift, and then you subtract one, so that at zero velocity, there's no redshift. So it's a wavelength 656 divided by 656, if that's one, minus one, that's zero. Okay, so if that's the case, then your object is at rest and it's just normal. This one is shifted from 656 to 760, which is enormous, even by today's standards, it's pretty large. And it was not, no one could understand this. So it's just redshift parameter is 0.158. Okay, now that we know what's going on, that this is in fact a very, very distant object which is moving away from us at a very high speed, a good fraction of the speed of light, in fact. Now try to understand that. Anyway, if you want to get numbers on this, there is a reference here which I've considered from UCLA Astronomy Department. There's something called CosmoCalc. You put that redshift, the 0.158, so that's the fractional redshift that is used. Redshift parameter is really the best way to describe it. And you put that number in, and you will find that with reasonable cosmological assumptions, which you have to put into this calculator in order to get out, but putting in the current ones, it turns out that the distance of this thing is 2 gigalight years. That's 2 billion light years. And if just by coincidence, the Andromeda galaxy, our famous nearby neighbor, is about 2 million light years. I think it's 2.5. But anyway, let's call it 2 million light years. This thing is 2 billion light years. It's 1,000 times farther away than the Andromeda galaxy. And you're seeing it in a little C star, magnitude 12.6. So that's amazing. I know I've read this when I remember reading this. I'm not so young, as you can probably tell. I remember reading this in the early, let's see, I was graduating from college. It was in the 60s. And it was a mystery until the spectrum was no one thought that we'd put in a 0.158 redshift on a spectrum. Why would you want to do that? And the answer is this thing really is far away. It's really moving away from us at an incredible speed, and it's very far away. It's not a star. It's a cosmological object, and that was very hard to understand for years and years until it became accepted that this is, in fact, it's not even a galaxy. What it is, if you look at the image, I don't know if we can get back to it, but if you look at, there's no tail. It just looks like a star. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Now, I had a few years ago, I had a 12-inch telescope up in the Poconos, and I took this picture. You see it there. I reversed the black and white so you could see the jet more clearly. It wouldn't have been very obvious otherwise. So this thing, it's a radio emitter, so that's already weird. Stars aren't normally a radio emitter. It's a strong radio emitter, and it has an incredible redshift, which means it's not nearby. It's not in the Milky Way by any stretch of the imagination, and it's something else. So what is it? It's actually it's part of a galaxy. It's not a galaxy there because you can't see the galaxy. It's so far away you can't. The galaxy would be hidden within that diffraction circle there, that image circle, and so the what is this object? That was the question for a long time, and then finally it was realized that this was some kind of an object which is different from all the other stars. So it's got the name quasar, it's a strange name. The QU part comes from quasi, which means like or as if. And so a quasi star is one way that you would have said it, but it's also radio emitting. So you need to think of a good acronym that will encompass all of that. And I don't know who came up with the name, but anyway, the name quasar stuck. And that's what we call them now. For short, we can call them a QSO. That would be quasi-stellar object. So we don't know what the hell it is, but it is an object of some sort. So we call it a QSO. And these things, there are quite a number of them. This was the brightest one. And that's presumably one of the reasons why it was discovered, although the radio emission was the real thing. Nobody would have noticed this thing at magnitude 12.6 as anything worth looking at. Look at all the zillions of other stars there are nearby that are just as bright and perhaps even the same general color. But the spectrum, of course, is very weird because of the redshift. So so it doesn't actually look red. You might be confused by that. The reason it doesn't appear red is because there's yes, there is extra red, things are shifted toward the red, but there's violet things that are shifted, and you see them also. So the net effect is that it doesn't look red. So if you could see the color of this thing, it wouldn't look red, even though it's been red shifted. It's just that the individual lines are shifted to longer wavelengths. And unless you can see the lines, you will not notice that. So anyway, so it's a quasi-stellar radio object. It happens to be the very closest one. And we had this website here, which fortunately has a nice calculator, and you can put in the number and it will tell you the distance. Of course, distance in a flat universe is a nice simple concept, but in an expanding relativistic universe, distance is not a simple concept. So there are various ways of measuring it, but one of the good ways is the light travel time. So that it's the time, or the look back time, basically. It's how many years ago the light was emitted that finally made it to your eye at the speed of light. And for these distant objects, it's in the range of billions, billions. Now, I've been on a hunt for a long time, both with my 12-inch telescope and with this sea star for other quasars which are farther. And I'm not going to tell you about those now because I'm going to do those individually. But this is the closest one. It's quite bright. You can see it. Like I said, it's magnitude 11.6. If you handle your sea star properly, you'll be able to get to magnitude 15. Now around here, this is Philadelphia, suburb, and it's a little harder, but you can still get down to within the same, within one magnitude of a totally dark site, which of course doesn't exist, but there's some that are a lot darker than around here. So it's still pretty good, and magnitude 12.6. Okay, so you can see it, and you're seeing back. Look at that little dot there, right in the middle of the circle. That little dot, that light that made that is what's the number? 2 billion years old, well before there were any men around. I guess the Earth was around 2 billion years ago, but barely. It didn't look like the Earth we know and love. But that's what it was. So I'm going to try to see what else we can pull out of this. All right, so
we do have to get on to the other folks. There's still numerous people that have to present.
I'm not going to give away my hand here, but I actually, it turns out that this is not really, as quasars go, it's not really all that bright. It just happens to be pretty close. So that it's quite bright, magnitude 12.6. It's not quite a naked eye object, but it's not that far below. So, and it's a cosmological object. It's, it's really, really far away. I was on a hunt for what else can we see here, and there are a couple others, and I will be describing those when I get my computer back. Unfortunately, the server at Drexel has little hiccups now and then, and it stops working, so I can't even get these pictures. But fortunately, I had sent it to Rob, and he was smart enough to save it. So thank you, Rob.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
thank you
I don't have anything. Okay, so this is it, and here's the little interesting thing about it that you can actually see, but not with a sea star. This is way beyond the level of a sea star. It turns out it's magnitude 20, and in logarithmic scale, magnitude 20 is one heck of a lot fainter than magnitude 12. So you need a nice telescope at a pretty dark sky to see this, but there is a telltale sign next to the quasar. It's that little line that you see coming down at, what would that be, like 4 o'clock perhaps, or maybe 5 o'clock on a normal clock. And that faint line is a jet. It's a relativistic jet. And the reason it's there is because the quasar is accreting. It's pulling in gas from its surrounding galaxy because we can't see the galaxy. This is part of the thing that's hard to understand. It's all been overwritten by this giant red blob, black blob, sorry, that is the image of the star. But if you could get rid of that somehow and just see what was coming from behind, you would see this, well, you see this jet, but it barely shows up here, even with a nice 12-inch Hyperion telescope. It barely shows up. And I've looked at this thing. There's a what is it? The Sloan Digital Sky Survey, SDSS. You can go to the Sloan Digital Sky Survey and you can ask for 3C273, and they did it. So you can actually see it on your computer, the image. This is the SDSS was made with a 96-inch telescope in Arizona, no, New Mexico, sorry. And it's a professional level thing, and you can see the jet, but not much better than this. It's amazing that with this little 12-inch Hyperion telescope, I was able to pull out that jet at all. But anyway, there it is, and the reason it's there is because there is presumably accreting an object there, very super condensed, gravitationally collapsed. Really, basically, it's a black hole, and stuff falling into the black hole heats up because it gets squished and squashed, and it goes to millions of degrees and billions of degrees, and it's really hot. And some of this stuff squishes out, just like, a toothpaste tube. You squish it hard enough, and you would get a jet of toothpaste coming out of it.
Okay.
Anyway, this is a jet. So that's the story. Yeah, you're asking a question, so go ahead. I'm talking too much.
Yeah, I don't want to disturb you, but we got a number of other people to present.
I'm going to get out of this. So anyway, I decided to cut this short by just doing the one object. But what I'm finding is that with a sea star, you can see this thing, you can find it, you can pull it out. Of course, you're not going to see any details, but you can at least see the object. And so that's what I decided to do. And I'm kind of on a journey here to how far out in the universe can we get? And I'm not going to tell you the answer, but it's a lot farther than this with a sea star. So you'll have to hold on and tune in next week to hear the sequel of this story. Okay, that's all I'm going to say for now.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much. Appreciate it. Nice work. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, Eric Rosenthal did photo of M42, and he did a number of other photos. He wrote a little description here, said he was doing some experiments with some different modes and some ideas. I can't read the whole thing right now, but the key point is that he did a bunch of experimentation, and he'll be giving us some more details later on about those experiments he was doing. Here is M31 that he did. Here is M101, M42, and IC434, better known as the horsehead. So there's a number of nice objects that he took. M51 with different exposure times. The one on the left is 115 minutes. The one on the right is about 60 minutes. So this shows how the noise gets reduced as you expose for longer. And the one over here is apparently IC5146, which I'm not sure what that's called. Terry? That's me. Did you want to come up here?
No, you can go ahead and click.
Okay, and you want to say stuff?
No, so, I'm really amazed at how short of an exposure you can take to get really good images. These are not very long, they're not hours worth long. And it produces some nice color, nice stars, a lot of stars. I especially like the Crescent Nebula, but over there, that Bubble Nebula, I think is really cool. I'm gonna try to go longer than that, make it look like Bill Hannigan's. Or not, probably not. But you can actually zoom in on it, and the stars are still nice and round, and you can see almost a complete bubble, and it's not that long, it's only a few minutes. And this is from my backyard. which is supposedly Bortle 6. Bortle goes up to 10. My backyard is about Bortle 50. It's pretty bright. One thing I did do is 3D printed a long tube to slide in the front of it to get rid of the extraneous light, and that works. But these two pictures were not taken with that tube. This is before I printed the tube. But that's all. I mean, there's no hydrogen filter thing or, you know, whatever. It's just doing its own thing. It's stacking the pictures all by itself. And I probably darkened them a little bit in the photo app on my phone, and that's about it. Not much going on there. So that was the comet that we all looked at from up at whatever the name of that place is. It's no, the township place.
Yeah.
So I took a bunch of pictures of the comet, and some I put the comet's head down in the bottom right. The tail was really long and bright. Then I moved the tail up to the top left, and the anti-tail is really long. So I just kind of put it in the middle, and there it is. Nice head, a nice anti-tail, a nice tail. So over on the right, we're occulting Mars, and I never put it into movie mode before, first time, and the two movies are the one on the left is getting close, and then on the one on the right, it's going behind the moon, and you can see it's really swimming. The atmosphere is not steady at all. There's a lot of atmospheric movement. But, you know, I think it did a pretty good job for what it is.
Very good. Sure.
Yeah, and I can't claim anything here except I pushed the button, it moved to where I wanted it to move, and I pressed the button to start the movie and ended the movie, and that's all it was. Simple as that. It's pretty cool. Cool. And over on the left is a nice full moon with Mars right there. Pretty sharp for what it is. In the middle is M57. Again, a lot of stars, a lot of color. And all I did here is I probably just added a little bit of contrast to this. There's no, I didn't do anything with the color or anything else. And the same over on the right. And you can see that was only a 2-minute exposure, so there's a lot of noise. I'm going to go back to the Dumbbell Nebula and expose it for a lot longer and get rid of that noise and make it look like the Ring Nebula, M57 in the middle. But that Dumbbell Nebula is pretty cool. I wish I could take credit for stacking and doing all that fancy stuff, but the telescope did all that for me. And I think that's probably it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that's it for what I had in my presentation. And then you had something separate. If you want to just open it. Is the right one? Yep.
Fire it off. All right, my apologies.
You have one? Yeah, it's fine.
My apologies to Rob for not going with the program and getting the memo. I brought my own presentation, so that's an exaggerated view of what I think my sky looks like in Newark. It's light polluted and surrounded by trees, so the sea star gives me the ability to find that little hole in the trees and actually image something. So each of the images I did, the sea star is F5, ISO 80 is the default, and and they're all 10-second images. All the editing I did was in Photoshop and Topaz Labs, which does noise reduction and sharpening, and I did a little tinkering in Zero. So next.
Wait, is there nothing there?
Oh, come on.
Nothing there?
Oh, come on. Nothing there.
Mhm.
That's weird. One more.
Go to the next
All
one.
right, go to the next one.
Yeah.
So M81, M82, just real happy with the structure that you can see in M81. I was very deliberate in not capturing that red starburst coming out of M82 because I knew it wasn't part of the galaxy. And of course, I'm joking. It'll get some better shot.
But yeah, I mean, each is not bad, but I really like how I made it when it came out. M51, this is came out a lot better than when I've done it with a C8 on a proper mount and a DSLR. Before, this came out much better, so.
Little galaxy down there in the right corner.
Yes,
Yeah.
so the composition's a little funny. The galaxy's kind of offset a little bit. That's because I couldn't bear to crop out that galaxy in the lower right.
Did you do that in the new mode where you have the wider field, or is this the original?
This is the original mode. I did the horse head in the mosaic. So I'll go next.
So Bill, where were you when you're taking?
So a couple of the ones in the southern sky, I actually clamped a platform out my second story bedroom window and put the sea star out there and took some images over the trees.
So you're sitting in your house, right?
Yes, sitting in the house.
With your phone, watching
Yep.
the phone, right?
Yep, watching the phone and TV
watching-
and whatever, yeah.
Watching TV.
And the ones in the northern hemisphere, I was able to do from outside on the ground, but. Yeah, again, level it, set it, forget it, it's stupid simple. M101, I like how this one came out and again, did that in Photoshop. Now, the next image you'll see, this is some tinkering I did in Cyril with the star removal, and you can see, I'm amazed at how it took all those stars out and left just that smooth nebulosity.
Yeah, you can.
And then the next one is the star field without the nebula. I tinkered with putting those back together, and I like the one I did in Photoshop better, and I didn't bother, continuing, but just being able to separate them like that was really cool and work on the individual images. So.
Do you like it better with M101 or without it? Just wondering.
And this horse head, I was amazed at how much detail came out of that. Probably maybe a little over processed, but just amazing to be able to stick this little thing on the ground and come out with that much detail. This was done in the mosaic mode, so I pretty much captured as much as I could on that. And that's that.
So if it's 72 minutes, is this a compilation of like little 5-minute segments or?
So these are all 10-second exposures, and in the mosaic mode, it's capturing.
It's awesome.
It's capturing, succession of images around. So to get one, let's say 10-second image probably makes up several, and then those are all stacked up to a total time.
So do you know at the beginning it's going to take 107 minutes, or do you look at it as it's developing and say, I need more time?
Yeah, watch it as it goes, and you'll see if it's not mosaic, if it's normal mode, you're about 1.5 to 1. So, it'll take you 15 seconds to get a 10-second exposure. And, take you an hour and a half to get an hour of exposures. In mosaic mode, it's much longer to get that exposure.
And Greg, you're watching it on your phone or on your tablet. So the longer it goes, the brighter and the larger it is on your device.
You see it real time building up.
Yeah.
And then the other nice thing, if it finds one that's not right, it throws it out and doesn't add it in.
Does a great job of that.
I mean, for $450, you set the thing down and it does, you don't have to have an observatory, you have $50,000 worth of equipment. You're sitting there drinking a beer by the fireplace, watching the Eagles game, and this thing's just doing its thing. So it just,
Because the nice is it's easy to portable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Portable, you can take it
So,
anywhere you want.
Just
Yeah.
roll it up small.
And it's got a built-in dew heater.
Yeah.
And it's got built-in UHC filter, and pollution filter. It does movies. So, it's perfect.
Yeah, you saw that movie that I took. That's the first time I pressed that movie button on my phone.
Yeah. You said go take a movie.
Never did it before.
I've done
It's amazing.
applications with it. And what it does too, it's time stamping every picture. And so if you want to do occultations, scientific work, you can get the exact down to the millisecond when the star went on the moon. So,
In just the last year or so since these, well, thinking about a little more than that, but like in the last year, they've done firmware updates to add the mosaic mode. You can rotate.
Equatorial mode is pretty
And equatorial mode, so you can do like 30-second images.
And whatever it's called, now you can set it to take various images.
Yes.
So you just tell it what you want to take, and it goes from object to object to object.
Yeah, you can set up a
Set it up.
script.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can set up a script so you can set it up and then just go to bed. And let it go do its thing. Take M81, take M85, take this, take that, and then wake up the next day.
That's a cool feature.
Yeah.
You can plug an external power pack into it.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing. And we have all these as a learner.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we do. Everyone should keep in mind that we do have a number of pieces of astrophotography gear for loan. We have a C-Star, we have an ASI Air, we have a Canon 60D, we have an S-Big camera, we have a bunch of astrophotography gear out of Solon that you could use. We have lots of different gear that you can use. And just let us know if you want some training in it. Let us know if you want to borrow some stuff. We will help you get started with whatever you'd like to do. So this has been an excellent Astrophoto showcase. If you want to continue these discussions, by all means, you could do it in the other room where we have refreshments. So thank you, everybody, and be sure to participate in our club events during the summer. We still have astronomy workshops. We still have AP SIGs. We still have book club meetings. Everybody have fun. Have a nice summer.